Hello and welcome back to Ride Revival. Several years ago, I decided to start my own business and I started selling insurance. I sold auto insurance, home, life, and health, and I specialized in classic cars. Since I have a love affair with cars, I went to a lot of car shows and I was starting to find a lot of people that were very interested in classic car insurance. But they were only interested in working with somebody that had a classic car. So I started shopping for something that I wanted, something that was interesting to me, but that would be different from everything else that people had. You had to be careful not to offend anybody, and working with Mustangs and Camaros, there were so many of them that you tend to get labeled with different car groups and different clubs. So I wanted something that you didn't normally see. So I started shopping and looking around at different cars that would be interesting and would be a good topic, but not get pigeonholed into any certain type of a car. I wanted a convertible. I've always loved convertibles. And so I started looking at Oldsmobiles and Buicks and Pontiacs that were different from what a lot of the cars I was seeing at the car shows. I wasn't finding anything locally that I wanted that wasn't really catching my eye or was the type of a price that was affordable to me. I wanted something that I could just get in and drive and not have to do a whole lot of work, because again, I'm trying to get my business off the ground. I'm trying to get things started that way. I'm spending a lot of time trying to sell insurance, so I don't have time to devote to working on a car like this one that needs a lot of work. I need to be able to just jump in and drive it. So I started shopping online, looking at Craigslist, looking at eBay, and I found a 1964 Buick Skylark Convertible in Los Angeles. And I was really excited. Had a buy-in now of $5,000, which seemed a pretty good price for something that, according to the ad, had a rebuilt motor, had a brand new top, and had a older restoration, but appeared pretty good in the pictures. So I contacted the guy, and he didn't appear to know a whole lot about cars. I don't know if he was faking the idea that he knew a lot about the car, just didn't want to admit all of its issues, or if he just really didn't know anything about cars. He did send the car out to have the engine and the transmission rebuilt. He had receipts from the companies that he worked with that did that work. He did have a brand new top on it. That was obvious from the pictures, or appeared to be obvious from the pictures, that it had a new top. And it had new tires and wheels. As you can see from the pictures, the wheels were very dated. They're not at all attractive. They didn't appear to be that they fit in the wheel wells, but it's hard to tell from the photos and the images, because it is jacked up fairly tall. It was his style, so he claimed. He had spring spacers in the front and air shocks in the back, so it had a pretty high stance, but it looked like something that I could work with. So I hit the buy it now price. At $5,000, I didn't think I could go too wrong, but at the same time, I told him, I'm going to buy a flight ticket. I'm going to fly to LA. You can pick me up at the airport, show me the car. If it's everything that you say it is, I'm going to drive it home. So, to drive from LA to Salt Lake City, is it drivable? Oh yeah, no problem, no problem. Everything on the car is great. No problem at all to drive it home to Salt Lake City. So the owner of the car picked me up at the airport, which is, I gotta admit, was a little scary, a little frightening, knowing that I have $5,000 in a cashier's check with me that I'm going to give somebody for a car that I haven't even seen yet, and I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if I can trust him or not. It's kind of a leap of faith. It's tough. Looking back, I don't know if I would do it again. I would probably put the money in a trust of some sort and not have it with me. But the guy seemed trustworthy, and when he picked me up at the airport, once I met him and shook his hand, I was more at ease. But it's still kind of a frightening thing to do. So we drove to his house. The car was sitting out front. I looked it all over, and it was everything that he said. I asked him if it ever had any rust repair. He claimed he didn't know. Everything that I could see on the car, it had some little bubbles around the rear quarter panels, so it was obvious that it did have some rust. It's hard to tell whether it had been repaired or not before. It looked like it had probably been painted a couple of times. From looking over the car, it was originally white, and then it was blue, and then it was white again. It looked like it might have been blue a couple of times. So it had a lot of paint on the car. But overall, it was a good 10-footer. From 10 feet away, you walk around the car, it looked pretty nice. The interior had been completely redone. It was a poor restoration. It wasn't the best restoration, but it was something that I could feel good about getting in and drive it with a new motor, a new trans, new tires. It seemed safe enough and reliable enough that I could drive it to some car shows and enjoy it and have something to talk about in selling my classic car insurance. So I bought it, and so I asked him again, okay, am I going to have any problems? Is there anything that I need to take care of before I drive this car all the way back to Salt Lake City? Because it's going to take me a couple of days. By the time I was leaving out of LA, it was midday, and I've got to go across the desert and get into southern Nevada, and I wasn't going to drive it all the way through the night and drive it home to Salt Lake City. My parents lived in Mesquite, Nevada, so I was planning on stopping there and spending the night. So he again said, oh yeah, absolutely, nothing wrong with the car, everything functions perfectly, just put gas in it and go. Yeah, liar. I first went to a gas station to fill it up with gas, and I thought, well, while I'm here, before I go on a long drive, let's check the oil. The oil was low. For a brand new motor, it shouldn't have been low, but it was about a quart low. I wasn't sure if it was leaking or not, or where the oil was going, so I bought another quart of oil to take with me just in case, and I hit the road. Rolled down all the windows. It was very hot. I was planning on putting the top down to go through the desert, but it was about 115 or plus degrees going across that desert, so putting the top down and getting baked in the sun wasn't a good option. The back window zipped out. It did have a brand new top on it, so I left the top up, zipped out the back window, rolled down all the windows, put my arm on the door, and that car cruised nicely. Drove nice, had very good response to the pedal. Brakes seemed active. Transmission shifted well. Power steering was great. That was about it for the options. It did have a power top as well. But overall, it was a really nice car. I was pleased with my purchase. I was very happy about it. Until I almost got to Mesquite. So just outside of Mesquite, it just started getting dark. I turn on the headlights. It doesn't have any. I am now going into Mesquite totally in the dark with no headlights. I kept playing with the switch. I pulled over and checked. I wiggled wires. There are no headlights. It appears that they are all burned out. I can't believe this guy tells me, oh yes, it is safe to drive, knowing it doesn't have headlights. But I'm able, after playing around with them, to get one headlight of the 4, which was a bright light, to actually work. And I was pissing off a lot of people with one bright headlight. I had a lot of honking horns and flashing lights from people mad that I left my brights on, but every time I would turn off my brights, I would be totally in the dark, and then people would realize, oh, no wonder the idiot's driving with his bright on. So, needless to say, I did finally get into Mesquite and spent the night. I wasn't planning on driving in the dark again. I'll worry about putting headlights in it later. By the time I left Mesquite, it was still fairly early in the day. I had some insurance business that I needed to do in the middle of central Utah, so it was a little bit of a detour, but I'd still be home before it got dark. I did my detour, went over, did some insurance work, had to go up over the mountain pass in the Rocky Mountains, and it started raining. And it started raining harder and harder. No problem. Flip on the windshield wipers. Nothing. No windshield wipers. So I'm hoping it's just a fuse. I pull off. Fuse is fine. Nothing checks out. There's just nothing that works. I don't have tools to be messing with it. I'm gonna have to drive it in the rain with no windshield wipers. So as I proceed to go up over the mountain pass, and it's raining harder and harder and harder, now all of a sudden I have the water going up the windshield and in my lap. The new top, come to find out, didn't have a new seal. There is no seal across the windshield header, and I have water just running over the dashboard, over the steering wheel, over my lap. I've got a plastic bag that I had from some groceries with me that I'm putting over me, trying to keep somewhat dry, and I am obviously furious for being in this situation. I'm being lied to by somebody that says everything works when it doesn't. As I got over the mountain pass and the rain was stopping and I was getting dry and I was getting more comfortable with the car and I was feeling good about the car again, no big deal, it needs headlights, it needs windshield wiper issues fixed, but I'm still happy with the car. I'm coming down off the mountain pass, I'm coming down off the hill, I'm seeing traffic up ahead, and the brakes fail. There is nothing scarier than coming down off of a mountain pass at a pretty good rate of speed, coming up on the heavy traffic, and that pedal is not working correctly. It's slowing down, but it is not stopping. And I'm just hoping that the emergency brake works. And with emergency brakes on the older car, you don't just push it all the way down, because you can easily go into a spin. If the rear wheels lock up, it will flip you around. So I'm easing in on that emergency brake, and I've got my fingers crossed. This car's going to stop. This car's going to stop. And luckily, everything was fine. The car did slow down. When I stopped shaking after pulling off at the side of the road and let the brakes cool down, it had just overheated. The brakes were fine, but it was not a good situation. Come to find out later, the bigger wheels, it had a 17-inch wheel with a larger tire. It was just too much for the original brakes. So that was something I knew I was going to have to address right away as well. So anyway, in the end, I got the car home. I was still happy with my purchase. I think $5,000 at the time was a really good buy. It did have a new top. It did have a rebuilt motor. It did have a rebuilt transmission. I had a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation. So it was going to be a good car to sell insurance, take to car shows, and be able to enjoy it. So after getting it home and wanting to take it to some car shows, I figured I better fix the issues. Took out the windshield wiper motor. It was frozen solid. It was completely full of rust. So it never did work. Not in all the times I'm sure that guy owned it. So once I looked over all the headlight system, it wasn't fuses, it wasn't wiring, everything was fine. It was just burned out headlights. Another thing that I'm sure the guy that was selling the car knew darn well that those headlights were all burned out. Why he couldn't have just told me that, I don't know. I could have easily run to a store before I left LA and bought new headlights for it if he'd just let me know. Shame on me for not checking all those things. That's one thing I will never do again. I won't just trust somebody when they say, yeah, everything works. Now, make sure everything works before you drive it, especially a long distance. You're going hundreds of miles. I want to make sure that car's safe. I want to make sure it's going to stop. I want to make sure that it's got windshield wipers when it starts raining, and certainly that you have headlights when it gets dark. But like I say, once I got it home, I was happy with it. I tinkered with it a little bit, got everything functioning correctly, and then I was able to start taking it to some shows and enjoying it. It was something I could depend on at that point. I could jump in it, and I could start it, and I could go to a show, and I could start selling insurance. And people liked the car because it was different. There was not another 64 Skylark at any car show that I ever went to. Never saw another one. 64, 65, whether it be a coupe, whether it be a Grand Sport, whether it be a convertible. I haven't seen one in my area, so it was a good choice of car, and it was very popular at the show. So So when I first started taking the Buick to car shows, I was having a lot of success talking to people about getting in their insurance. And I also got a lot of people laughing at the car. It was a good conversation. I wasn't insulted by it at all, but they laughed about the wheels. The wheels were way too big for the car. The stance was so tall that the suspension was literally topped out. The air ride on the back, in order to keep the tires from scraping on the fender wells, the air shocks were all the way up. The springs were maxed out on the front. There was spacers all over in it. They were spreading the springs out to keep the wheels from scraping on the front fenders, so that the tires weren't set up right for the suspension or anything. So I needed to get rid of the tires and wheels. Well, I ran into a guy at one of the car shows. We got talking, and he's asking me questions about the car. So I started telling the guy about some of the cars that I'd worked on in the past and some of the car shows, and he remembered the Camaro that I had that had won some awards. So he asked me to come to work for him. And doing the insurance, I was working nights and weekends anyway, so to come to work for him in the shop and work during the day was wonderful. I like cars more lower to the ground. I don't like the tall stance that the car had, so I wanted to lower it. So the hot rod shop's going, well, let's use it as an example. Let's put air ride in it. Let's slam this thing on the ground and see if we can bring in some attention towards doing air ride systems. At the time in my area, air ride suspension, you didn't see it very much. It was fairly new. I know it was really big on the West Coast. You're seeing a lot in the magazines, but in my area, we didn't see a whole lot of it. So that was something that the hot rod shop wanted to sell. They had a line from Universal Air for all the parts, and they wanted to use my car as an example. So a great opportunity for me. I could get all the parts for wholesale. The shop was willing to help me put the air ride system in. It was all free labor, a lot of expertise. I had to do some modifications of the front suspension in order to get the car to go down as far as I wanted it to. The rear end didn't have to do anything. It was just a matter of taking the springs out, putting the airbags in, and then hooking up all the lines. So in the next videos, I will take you through that whole setup and explain how the air ride system went in and all the disasters that air ride caused to that poor car. It went from a nice driver that I could jump in and drive anytime to a complete body off restoration. That air ride suspension broke that car almost in half. It's amazing what you can find patchwork underneath what a car looks like really nice that was not very well done. The people that had restored it before, the years before, the many times before, had put all kinds of patches and fiberglass and had done some repairs that when the air ride suspension started to tweak a convertible, all that started to break loose. So, in the future videos, I'll walk you through all those. I'll show you what went wrong. I'll show you what broke. And I'll show you why I had to take the body off of the frame in order to fix it correctly. So, like I say, what was a nice driver, what I was really enjoying, ended up being way beyond what I had planned on for the car. But it took me many years. I think it was probably 6 or 7 years to build the car. I had a ball. I got way carried away because I could. I'd never modified a car so drastically, but when I was working at the hot rod shop, I was seeing a lot of really cool things that I wanted to do to the car. At the time, overhauling with Chip Foose was on TV, and I was getting more ideas of what I wanted to do to the car. It was already completely body off the chassis, so why not? So stay tuned. I'm hoping that I can release a new video about the Buick once a week. I'll try to do it the same way, where I can show videos and explain and do a voiceover as to what I did and why, what the modifications were. I'm hoping that I can lay out all the costs for you. If it works out as I go, maybe I can just throw in some of the costs, what I spent for the car, which I've already explained, and then what the costs were of doing the air ride suspension and chrome and upholstery and paint and custom work and things that I did to the car. And then in the very end, I can lay out all my costs and all my hours. That's another thing. I highly documented all the hours on this, and that's something you have to really think about when you're building a car like a full body off restoration. It's how much time it takes. I had no idea the amount of time that it was going to take to finish the car once I got all the body mods done. Once I got all the welding done, once I got the body back on, the amount of hours that it takes to flatten the car with panels that big, sanding, filler, primer, sanding, primer, sanding, it is a lot of hours. So I'll walk you through that too, and I'll explain all those hours and all those costs and what the total build was and what the car it was worth in the end. I did go way overboard on the car, but I wasn't building it to sell it. I was building it to enjoy it, and I really did enjoy the car. So, thank you for watching. If you like what I'm doing, please hit the like button. Subscribe, and as I add more videos, you can hit the bell, and you'll get notifications as I add more and more videos in the future. So, once I'm finished with the Buick, then I'll start going on to the Pontiac. So that'll be videos that we work on too. I've got a lot of videos in the works. So hopefully, if it's not taking up too much of my time, I'll try to release a video every week. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.